evening. Today we're going to be checking out top 20 must-see places in the USA before you die. Because you can't see them when you're dead. Because you're dead. Hope you're doing absolutely beautiful today. Like I said, we're checking out the top 20 must-see places in the US of A. I hope you're doing good. I need to calm down, man. If you're new here, you've probably left. But if you're still here, good evening.
I'm going to start off by going over the must-see cities, which of course means New York.
Where is this?
First. It's the largest
New York?
and most vibrant city in the country. There's just so much stuff to do. There are so many great neighborhoods to visit, and you can walk around a lot of it, take the subway. Where else can you do a 500,000 things all by $2 to $3? And it isn't just the touristy type stuff either. You can go to Times Square for an hour or two, check that out. But it's also just some of
New York.
Other neighborhoods, other interesting parts of town.
That does not look like what I would think. Is this New York? Woo! That's New York.
Manhattan, and I certainly think that New York City is one that every American has to see. At the opposite end of the country, you know I'm going to have to mention San Francisco.
What?
Similar to Manhattan, there's just so much to see in a small area. So it's a really tight, compact city. You can walk around a lot.
That's beautiful.
Frequently. There's just so many really...
I love this photo. Holy shit. That looks like a photograph you'd frame and hang on your wall and then get like a famous singer to sign it for no reason.
Cool neighborhoods to see. Just so much variety to see in a small area. And similar to Manhattan, it
the Brooklyn Bridge.
Do the touristy stuff, but also check out some of the more off the beaten path neighborhoods and parks all throughout the city. No,
that's not the Brooklyn Bridge. Sorry. That's the Golden Gate Bridge, isn't it? I hope.
Off the beaten path neighborhoods and parks all throughout the city. It's a wonderful place to explore.
Yeah.
Going into the Midwest, another must-see big city is Chicago.
Damn.
I think from a pure downtown perspective, this one is better than either New York or San Francisco. I think those cities, the best neighborhoods are not downtown. But
Tell me
Chicago,
why.
I think the heart of the city is the CBD. You can make a pretty good argument that the architecture in Chicago's downtown is more interesting than the one in Manhattan, even though there aren't as many skyscrapers.
Oh, bro, I would honestly, that kind of, looking at this kind of makes me feel a little bit woozy. I can't lie.
It isn't quite as walkable as New York or San Francisco, but you can walk around quite a bit. And there are a lot of other really interesting neighborhoods all throughout the town that aren't just the downtown.
That's another one of those photos.
Some of the touristy areas like Wrigleyville, but a lot of really other cool, very interesting neighborhoods.
That you frame.
Another must-see city, I think, for Americans is Boston. I think it has the most interesting historical neighborhoods of all the big cities in the U.S. A really nice waterfront.
God damn.
A lot of interesting neighborhoods that are close to each other because the city is relatively compact. You have the suburb of Cambridge, also very historic. It's often considered one of America's finest cities, and I'm not exactly sure what that means, but I agree.
Yeah, I agree too.
Another city that I think is a must-see is Washington, D.C. It's not just
is that the White House? Why do I feel like it's not, but it kind of looks like it a little bit? You know, with the beams? No?
The mall and the Smithsonian museums, but also like the other cities I mentioned, a lot of really cool neighborhoods. It is pretty walkable, but it also has a really nice metro system.
This is it.
You might not want to walk to. Also, just across the Potomac River is Alexandria, Virginia, a really nice old town historic district. So whether or not you're interested in seeing the mall and the monuments, I do think Washington is a must-see city for Americans.
Okay.
Going to the far southeast of the U.S., another must-see city is Miami.
Oh!
And like the other cities I mentioned, this is a one-of-a-kind. There's nothing quite like Miami.
Look at that.
It's got that subtropical heat and humidity. It's always sunny.
There is nothing on this earth that I like more than Vice City vibes. It's a bit of me. It's just a bit of me.
It is bad as the more central and northern parts of Florida. It has a great food scene. It's heavily influenced by Cuba and other parts of the Caribbean and just Latin America in general.
Love that.
So you can go on down there and have a pina colada underneath a neon sign while watching half-naked people.
Do you like pina colada?
People dance until 4 in the morning.
Look at that.
Be like me and just enjoy the cultural stuff and the food and be in bed.
Where is that? I know it's Miami, but like,
I think that
what street?
A must-see is Pittsburgh. This might be a bit of a surprise. You don't often hear of Pittsburgh being a big tourist draw. And the reason why I like Pittsburgh so much is that it has so many unique neighborhoods very close to each other due to the geography of the city. You have the hills and mountains. I'm easily pleased, aren't I? Different type neighborhoods separated so they each have their own identity, but it's really easy to walk between the two, and you get a pretty good exercise doing so. So I think Pittsburgh is the most interesting of the quote-unquote normal cities.
I mean, this just looks like a normal town. I don't know why I'm getting excited. This genuinely just looks like a normal town, but I like.
In the U.S. and one I think all Americans should visit. And now, perhaps my most unpopular take in the video, I do think a must-see city for people is New Orleans. And yeah, I know a lot of
New
people
Orleans.
really hate New Orleans, but just like the other cities I mentioned, it's a one of a kind.
Why do people
So
hate
just
it?
like Miami, it has a very interesting and unique food culture, has an interesting culture with the French history and heritage.
Okay.
And just from a food, music, and architecture angle, I think New Orleans is a must visit. And you'll definitely want to see the French Quarter. I think the best time to see it is a weekday morning, like 9 a.m. or so. So none of the stores are open yet. It's nice and quiet.
Oh,
You can
look
check
at
out
that.
the architecture, and all the drunks have gone home. So yeah, it usually gets a bad rap, but for better or worse, there's nothing else
Why
quite
why
like
we
New
got a
Orleans.
bad rap?
Another must-see city for people, I think, is Charleston, South Carolina.
Charleston?
This is much smaller than the other cities I mentioned, but certainly worth a visit.
Ooh.
A really nice, well-preserved
Look at
historic
that.
district with no high-rise buildings. So you have the area with no high-rise.
4 floors, maybe even 5 if there's one below. That's a is that a house?
You have the area called the Battery with all the huge old homes. You have areas along King Street, some nice shopping.
Oh, look at
and it
that.
really is a wonderful city to walk around,
Beautiful.
at least the peninsula part of it with all those old buildings and those beautiful trees.
Love
But
that.
being right there on the coast, it also has wonderful seafood and some beautiful beaches on sea islands. For my wife and I, it's one of our favorite cities, and we love visiting there, and we think you will too. So that's why I think Charleston, South Carolina.
Are these homes? Are these people's homes? I don't think this is a home, but these look like they could be homes. Are you kidding me? This is people are out here living like this. You know what? Fucking fair play, man.
It's a must-see.
Love
the
it.
last must-see city, I think, in the U.S. is Santa Fe, New Mexico. And it's certainly no surprise that I put Santa Fe on
Just
a
near
list
Area
like
51.
This, but I do think it is a must-see. Like all the other places I mentioned, it's a one-of-a-kind place. There's nothing else quite like this. The history, the architecture. And there are other parts of New Mexico that do have that architecture and some history, but not anywhere near as much as Santa Fe. And kind of like Miami and New Orleans, a big reason why you want to go.
What the fuck is that? Why does that look like somebody dropped the insole of their shoe into there and put cheese over it? What the hell? That better not be a pancake. What the fuck is that?
Go there is that food. I love walking around the square and the greater historic district around there, as well as visiting some of the art galleries. But it's also a small enough city to where you can get out of the city very easily into the mountains onto a nice hike with good views of the city. Santa Fe is the oldest European settlement in the U.S. after St. Augustine, Florida, and I think is a must-see. So those are
that's
the
a cool
cities
fact.
I think that are must-sees. You get a good variety of the U.S. as a whole by visiting
Dude, this
those.
is a really cool map. I like the way it shows like the peaks, land elevation. That's pretty cool. What would be the safest place to go if there was a tidal wave? Like Colorado or Wyoming?
Some
All
of
right,
the
good
beautiful
to know.
natural sites you can see in the contiguous U.S. I'm going to start with the most cliche one, and that's the Grand Canyon in Arizona. But there's
Jesus.
a reason why it's so cliche. It is huge and it's beautiful.
It's so
Most
beautiful.
people visit by just driving along the main road and stopping at some.
It never looks real,
a photo and then get
right?
back into the car to the next viewpoint.
It never
But
looks
I think
real.
The best way to visit the Grand Canyon is just to park your car somewhere and then follow the rim trail for as long as you want. I think you get way more out of it that way. I think you get also more out of it doing. But whether you're a casual national park visitor or you're a hardcore backpacker, you definitely want to see the Grand Canyon.
Definitely.
The other cliche, but cliche.
I am going to Las Vegas in just over 4 weeks. I will be renting a car and I will be going to the Grand Canyon. So if you never hear from me after the 1st of April, get someone to the Grand Canyon because I'm probably stuck down a hole somewhere. All right. This is me telling you guys, if I'm lost, that's where I am.
Packed. There'll be a bunch of people in most parts of the park you go to, but it'll still be worth it. So you will want to
Look
see
at
the most
that.
well-known parts of the park, some of the places where it's going to be the busiest, but there are certain places where you can go where even in the high season there might not be that many people. So for example, the last time we were there was May 2017, and that was a pretty busy time for the park, but at the Norris Geyser Basin there were very few people. So if you want to see some beautiful...
I think we've seen this in a video before. You see this image right here? This just sums up America, man. It's got literally everything. Everything. Look at this. We got a fucking hole in the ground for no reason here, bro. And that looks like it goes down to hell. That looks like it just infinite. Like if I dive down there, how deep is that? Deep enough.
Norris Geyser Basin, there were very few people. So if you want to see some beautiful volcanic
That's
and
so
geologic
cool.
formations plus some beautiful mountains,
That's
you'll definitely want to
so
see
cool.
Yellowstone.
I love
Another
that.
must-see national park, I believe, is Olympic National Park in Northwest Washington.
Okay.
Similar to how New York and San Francisco and
Look
Pittsburgh
at
have
that.
many changing neighborhoods over a short distance, Olympic National Park is a similar type thing for parks. It has 3 very distinct parks. You have the high Olympic
Holy
mountains themselves.
shit.
You have the beautiful Hoh rainforest, the temperate rainforest, and also that gorgeous coastline. I don't think there are any other national parks that gives you this much
it the
variety
same
in this
place?
short of a distance. You can literally hike on a volcano one day, then hike through a beautiful green temperate rainforest the next day, each night camping on the beach. The next national park that I think is a must visit is Bryce Canyon in southwest Utah. I think Bryce has what I would call the easiest scenery in the country. You can drive along the main road through the park, kind of like the Grand Canyon, and just stop at some of the viewpoints. But if you don't go in the summer, it will be much less busy, and you're very close to some of these gorgeous spots.
That blows my mind.
You can do really short hikes down into the canyon, much easier than going down into the Grand Canyon. So Bryce is a great national park for people that have limited mobility. If you're elderly or disabled, you can see quite a bit of fantastic scenery without getting very far out of your car. But it's also a great national park for people that are more hardcore that want to go backpacking for several days. So if you're going to do the Grand Circle National Park circuit throughout the Southwest, you're probably going to visit at least 2 or 3 of the national parks in Utah. But if you could only visit one,
look at that photo.
Another one I think all people should see is close to where I'm from. That's Sequoia Kings Canyon National Park in Central California. Everybody knows Yosemite.
I think these type of photographs are my favorite, man. We got greenery, we got ponds, and we got massive peaks. Got it all.
The national park up the road, and everybody goes there. Significantly fewer.
What size are they? Is this a real photo? What size are them trees?
People go to Sequoia Kings Canyon with the same beautiful scenery. It's much easier to get away from crowds. There's a tremendous backcountry if you want to get way back there. It's a park where it can be a relatively leisurely visit where you just visit the big trees areas and a couple of the really short day hikes. But there is a
I don't even know where we are anymore.
You can get way back there, get super lost if you want.
Look at that.
So yes, I'm biased. I grew up about 45 minutes away from Sequoia National Park.
Oh,
and
Sequoia.
I've been there a million times. But in my opinion, if you're only going to visit...
Look at this image. Look at that. That is gorgeous.
Either Yosemite or Sequoia, go to Sequoia.
Sequoia.
Staying in the West, going back to New Mexico, I think all people should see Carlsbad Caverns National Park. I think visiting a cave is a must-see for people, and I think the one that's the best for visitors is Carlsbad. You walk this incredibly long trail all the way down into the depths of the cave, and you can take a leisurely walk at your own pace around this big room. It's literally called the Big Room.
What the hell?
And obviously, the stuff you're going to see in a cave is going to be completely unlike things you're going to see on the surface. And if you go in the off-season...
Like, what is this? What is this that's been crystallized here, whatever you want to call it? What is this?
Go early in the morning, so you're one of the first people down there. You can have that whole big room to yourself.
How can that be a rock?
And if you go in the summer times at dusk, is the huge bat flight of Mexican free-tailed bats. I know a lot of folks are afraid of caves and bats, but I do think seeing a cave is a must-see, and Carlsbad is the one.
I have a lot of time for a bat.
Another must-see national park, and one that's off the beaten path, is Teddy Roosevelt National Park in western North Dakota. And it is very easy to get peace and quiet, solitude in this national park. You don't have to walk very far from the parking lot to get complete peace and solitude.
Imagine taking a deep breath there.
It's gorgeous. It's subtle beauty, but it just goes on forever. And you'll also see a ton of wildlife here. A lot of bison, prairie dogs, bald eagles, and wild horses. We've been to this park multiple times.
Oh, look at those. We're friends.
Off the beaten path. It's one of the least visited national parks in the contiguous U.S., and I highly recommend it. Teddy Roosevelt National Park.
Do you know what the most mad thing about this video is? The craziest thing about the whole video we've watched so far? This is in the same country. Like, this just sums up the US. Bonkers. Because it just has everything. It has every type of scene you'd ever need.
Are the Great Smoky Mountains straddling Tennessee and North Carolina. The national park, especially in the summer and fall, can be super crowded, but once you get outside of the park, you can still be on some of these beautiful back roads, see the same gorgeous scenery without the crowds. Most people go in the fall for the fall foliage. It is beautiful, but if you go in the spring, it's just as beautiful with the green, but the waterfalls are flowing like crazy, and these are some of the most plentiful waterfalls in the country. So if you've seen the national parks of the West, beautiful exposed geology. But I
just want to run through there barefoot.
It might be beautiful, but when you go to the southeast, you can see these beautiful mountains covered in all this green. You'll definitely want to see the Great Smoky Mountains. Another off the beaten path national park, but I think is definitely a must see, is Conger.
Look at that. I want to walk through here barefoot too, and maybe dip my toes in there. They're probably crocodiles though.
National Park in South Carolina.
You know,
kind of like caves, people often forget about swamps. People don't like them, but I do think this is a beautiful sight to see.
I like swamps.
To visit. Within 100 yards of the parking lot, you're on the boardwalk path that goes on for a few miles. You're going through some deep swamps.
I really like that.
When it's flooded, the elevated parts will be walking over water, but usually it's not flooded. But there are also certain parts of the park where you're not on an elevated boardwalk. You're just walking along the dirt. There will be very few people around. You can just stop and sit and just enjoy the sounds of the swamp. And it gets
Like, is that a real... Am I looking at a real photograph right now, or is that a painting? This looks like a painting.
this name because the Congaree River flows right through it, and you can paddle through it in a canoe or kayak starting from Columbia going down through the park. I love this national park. I went there a bunch of times when I was living in Columbia, and I do think it is a must-see.
I'm not going to lie, that's one of my favorite ones.
And the last natural spot I'm going to mention as a must-see is not a national park, but a national forest, and that's Superior National Forest and the Boundary Waters Canoe Area in northern Minnesota. This is just thick, dense northwoods, beautiful green scenery, and a ton of lakes.
Look at that.
As you might expect with a name like the Boundary Waters Canoe Area, it's an area meant to be paddled around, and there's plenty of paddling options. But if you don't have a boat, don't want to paddle, there's plenty of things you can see on foot as well. Beautiful hikes through the forest and beautiful.
I love these so much. There's something photographs like this through to my brain.
Mountain and nature experience than what you might expect in the big national parks of the West.
I don't know how to explain it.
I think seeing the dense north woods of the upper Midwest is a really cool thing for all people to see. And I think the most must-see part of that whole region is the part of Minnesota, Superior National Forest, and the Boundary Waters.
Yeah, I agree.
So that was my look at the top 20 must-see places in the U.S.
Thank you, brother. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, we have got to the end of another video. I hope you guys enjoyed, honestly, my take on that entire video that we've just watched. Holy shit. I've said it so many times, and I'm just going to say it again. You guys better love where you live, because you live in a beautiful place. Good God. My goodness. Anyway, thank you for watching. Thank you for your time. I appreciate the hell out of every single one of you. Goodbye.